I never planned for that day to matter. It was a regular Wednesday in early May. I was living alone in a small apartment above a bakery in Madison, Wisconsin. I worked from home as a remote tech support agent. It wasn't exciting work, but it paid the bills, and I liked the quiet. My routine was simple. Wake up around 7:30, make coffee, answer emails, fix printer problems for strangers across the country, and stare out the window during breaks. I rarely went out during the week unless I had to. But that morning, something felt different. Not dramatic, just off. I woke up feeling slightly restless. Not tired, not anxious, just like I needed something to move. Something to shift. Maybe it was the weather. The sun was out, but the air smelled like rain. I brewed a cup of coffee, opened the window, and sat on the floor with my laptop. Work was slow. No urgent messages. No frozen servers or frantic clients. Just peace. Around 10:30 a.m., I got an email from my friend Caleb. Subject, coffee later? He was one of the few friends I still saw regularly. We met back in college and stayed close. He worked for the city and had flexible hours. We usually met up every few weeks for coffee or trivia night. I almost wrote back, maybe next week, but I paused. Then I typed, sure. Noon? Great, he replied. Same place. The same place was a quiet little cafe on Monroe Street. Brick walls, mismatched chairs, friendly staff. They always played indie folk music, and the barista had a tattoo of a typewriter on her arm. I'd been there dozens of times. Nothing ever changed. But that day, something did. I arrived 5 minutes early, got my usual black coffee, and took a seat near the window. Caleb hadn't arrived yet, so I pulled out my phone, scrolled aimlessly, then looked up and noticed her. She was sitting at the table across from mine. Curly dark hair, denim jacket, laptop open, earbuds in. She looked focused but relaxed. Her foot tapped gently to the beat of something I couldn't hear. Next to her laptop was a sketchbook. I don't usually notice people, not really. But she had a calm presence, like someone who didn't try too hard but still drew attention. I looked away quickly. I wasn't trying to be weird. Caleb arrived, dropped into the chair opposite me, and immediately started talking about his upstairs neighbor, who was apparently learning to play the drums. I nodded, laughed, sipped my coffee, but part of me kept drifting. Not staring, just noticing. At some point, the girl across from me closed her laptop and took out one earbud. Caleb had gone to the counter to get a cookie, and she caught my eye. Just briefly. Then she smiled. A simple, polite smile. But it hit different. Is the Wi-Fi acting weird for you? She asked. Her voice was warm, a little scratchy. Friendly. I glanced at my phone. No, it seems okay. She nodded. Probably just my browser having a meltdown. I smiled. They do that sometimes. She laughed, then turned back to her laptop. That could have been it. A quick exchange, nothing more. But after Caleb left, he had a meeting, I stayed. And she stayed. And for some reason, I said, what are you working on? She looked up, surprised, then closed her sketchbook halfway. Honestly, doodles. I'm supposed to be editing a podcast, but my brain's not cooperating. You have a podcast? Kind of. It's small. Stories and stuff. I like weird history. Forgotten people. Strange towns. That kind of thing. That sounds amazing, I said. And I meant it. She tilted her head, studying me. You're not just saying that to be nice, are you? I shook my head. I work in tech support. Believe me, I'm not usually impressed by anything. She laughed again. I'm Lila, she said, extending a hand. Daniel, I replied, shaking it. And just like that, a new thread began. We ended up talking for almost an hour. About music, books, why coffee in ceramic mugs tastes better than in paper cups. She told me she once lived in a ghost town for 3 weeks, doing sound recording for a documentary that never got finished. I told her about the time I got stuck in an elevator with a mime at a hotel in Kansas City. When she finally stood up to leave, she said, "I'll be back here Friday morning, around the same time, in case you're around." I nodded. "I might be." She smiled. "Cool." Then she left. The next day at work, I answered emails, reset passwords, helped someone in Florida figure out why their printer wouldn't scan to PDF. But I kept thinking about that conversation, about how easy it had felt, how light. Friday came, and yes, I went back. She was already there, sipping tea, headphones around her neck. "You came," she said, as if it genuinely surprised her. "Curiosity," I said, "and caffeine." She moved her bag and invited me to sit. That morning, she asked me questions. Not deep ones, just real ones. What do you do when you feel stuck? What's something you regret not doing? What's your comfort food? She had this way of making space in the conversation, like there was no rush to get anywhere. I told her things I didn't usually say aloud, about how I sometimes felt invisible, how I'd once wanted to be a writer, how I had a file full of unfinished short stories I hadn't touched in years. "You should write again," she said, "even if it's just for you." "I don't even know where to start." "Start with today," she said. "Write about this." So I did. That night, I wrote for the first time in months. Nothing fancy, just a simple note about coffee, curiosity, and a conversation that felt like exhaling after a long time of holding my breath. Weeks passed, then months. Lila and I kept meeting. Same cafe, different mornings. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't. Sometimes she brought her sketchbook, sometimes I brought my laptop. It wasn't romantic, not at first. It was a friendship made of small rituals and gentle honesty. But then one snowy morning in December, everything shifted again. She brought me a gift, wrapped in brown paper, tied with string. "It's not much," she said, "just a little nudge." Inside was a small, hardcover notebook. On the first page, she had written, "For Daniel, may you always write your Wednesdays." I looked up, and in that moment, I knew I didn't want to go back to the quiet routine before her. "I think I'm going to write that story I told you about," I said. She smiled. "I hope so." Then, for the first time, I reached across the table and held her hand. It was warm, steady. I never planned for that day to matter, but it did, because I almost stayed home. And if I had, I might have missed the one moment that made all the quiet days before it finally makes sense. And now, every time I sit at that cafe, I look at the chair across from me and remember what can happen when you simply decide to show up, even on an ordinary Wednesday.